What up, y'all? Hey, this is Mr. Austin. This is my first time using this little box thing I got right here, but we're going to see how it works out. Y'all tell me what you think. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. This is Unit 5, Lesson 3, and we're talking about displaying data on dot plots, histograms, and on box plots. All right, so just follow along. You're going to want to jot in your notes. Fair warning, I will not be writing everything down, so you need to listen to what I'm saying. That way, a lot of y'all have been pausing the videos and not really listening. You really need to listen to this video. That way you can get all of your notes. All right, first, let's go ahead, and this should just be a review. All right, so
is to identify each of these graphs. So the first one, this graph here, clearly it has dots, so it's going to be a dot plot. I'm just going to write dot plot here. It's kind of hard writing with this thing, but there we go. Dot plot. All right, so a dot plot is just a dot that it's a graph that represents each data point with dots. All right, and in here, in this box, I also want you to write that each dot represents one piece of data in the data set. Pause that and rewind it if you have to, but each dot represents one piece of data in the data set. All right, and our second graph, or our way to display our data, is called a histogram, and you're just going to write that in right here. I'm not going to write it in. You go ahead and write it if you need to know how to spell it. It's right there. All right, so a histogram. And a histogram, some of you might also call this a bar graph, but it is a graph that shows the groups of data in intervals. So notice here in this graph, this is a number of teens and the text messages they send each day. So here, this is a group, how many people send 0 to 49 text messages a day. And here we group them in how many people text 50 to 100 times a day. All right, so histograms are where you put groups of data using intervals or bins on a number line. And the height of each bar represents the number of data points in that group. You need to write all that in here. The last graph we're going to look at is called a box plot. All right, and a box plot is a graph that helps us show the spread of the data or the variation of the data. But you can just write box plot in there, and we'll talk about it more later in the video. All right, part 1 of our notes are going to be talking about dot plots. And I just want you to take a look at this situation. I'm going to read the problem. A random sample of teenagers ages 13 and 14 were asked, on average, how many text messages do you send per day? And here are the results. So we have somebody with 0, 10. Another student said they sent 10, another 10, another 10. 3 students said they sent 20 text messages on average per day. We had 1 student said they sent 30 text messages per day. And then 3 students said they sent 50. Another student said they sent 90 text messages per day, and 2 students said they sent 100 text messages per day. And then they displayed the data in a dot plot right here. So we see that 1 student said they sent 0 messages per day. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 students. 1, 2, 3, 4 students said they sent 10, 3 for 20, 1 student for 30. No student said they sent 40, and we can see that up here that no one said 40. And it keeps going, 3 for 50, 1 for 90, and 2 for 100. So, answering the questions there at the bottom, you're going to write everything you see in red, all right? You may think it's a lot, but you really need to make sure you get it all down if you want to get full credit. If you do not get it down, and I see you guys skipping out on your work, I'm going to give you a pink slip, and you're going to have to redo it anyway, so you might as well do it now. All right, so how many teenagers were surveyed, and how do you know? Well, if we count the number of dots, we will see that there were 15 dots, which means 15 teenagers were surveyed. I know this because there are 15 dots in the dot plot. Each dot represents 1 student. All right, we just talked about that, so get that down. The next question says, count the number of dots at 0 and at 10, and what do these numbers mean? Well, we look at 0 and 10. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots, which means that that 1 student said they sent 0, and then 4 students stated that they sent 4 text messages per day. So the way I worded that was, there's 1 dot at 0 and 4 dots at 10. That means 1 student stated they sent 0 text messages per day, and 4 students stated they sent 4 text messages per day. Boom. You like how I moved up, right? All right, so it says, what is one conclusion? Looking out there, this should be on the next page. What is one conclusion you can draw from this dot plot? So one conclusion I can draw from this dot plot is that nearly all the teenagers surveyed send at least 10 text messages per day. And if we see, we only had 1 student said 0. Everyone else said they sent at least 10, if not higher. So we look up here at the graph, That's how we can draw one conclusion. There are other conclusions you can draw from this dot plot as well. Like you can conclude that 2 students said they sent 100 text messages per day just by reading the graph. So there's several conclusions, but one broad conclusion I can make is that pretty much every student, all of the 15 students that we asked, or that whoever did the survey asked, sent at least 10 text messages per day. All right, part 2 of this lesson is talking about histograms. And let's look at example 1. We have the same data talking about the text messages sent per day and then the number of responses. So 9 students said they sent 0 to 49 text messages per day. And 6 students said they sent between 50 and 100. And if we look at our histogram, this is what it would look like. Notice we have our intervals down here on the horizontal axis and then the number of teenagers in each group on our vertical axis. Explain the difference between a dot plot and a histogram. All right, and basically the way I said it was that a dot plot shows each individual data point and is best used with smaller amounts of data. All right, we do not want to have to put, if we had 100 students in our survey, we wouldn't want to use a dot plot. That's a large amount of data. All right, histograms, however, group data using intervals or bins. All right, so notice this is an interval, 0 to 49. So we just lump all those people into one group. All of the students that sent between 50 and 100 text messages per day, we lumped all those teenagers into one group. So think about histograms as when we're lumping everyone into a group. When we were talking about dot plots, we had each individual data point plotted. Well, with histograms, they're in groups. All right? All right, in example 2, you have a table of data. And what I want you to do is draw this histogram in that space. You must draw it. Make sure it is neat in that space below. I will be checking for that. Again, you will get a pink slip if you do not have this graph drawn exactly the way you see it.
The next page, the directions tell you to use the histogram created on the previous page to answer the following questions. Again, you're going to get everything in red, but make sure you listen, y'all. I'm going to try to go through it pretty quick. Number 1 is
on
what
the vertical
do the
axis mean? Well, the numbers on the vertical axis are the number of teenagers that sent text messages each day. So on that vertical, which means running up and down, on that histogram that we just made, that you just made, those are the number of teenagers. Keyword is teenagers. All right, number 2, what do the numbers on the horizontal axis mean? And the number, this means the numbers on the horizontal axis are the intervals, all right, in groups of 20. So we group them in 20, of the number of text messages sent by the teenagers surveyed. All right, so the keyword there is text messages. All right, so let me review 1 and 2 again. On the vertical axis, that's the number of teenagers. And on the horizontal axis, those are intervals or the groups, and that represents the number of text messages sent by the teenagers that were surveyed. Number 3, what does the height of each bar represent? The height of each bar represents the number of students that belong in each interval group. So if we look at our graph, all right, the height of each bar represents the number of students who text 0 to 20 times per day, and that was 8 students. So the height of the bar represents the number of teenagers or students that fall into this category, all right? And the height of all the other bars represent the number of students who fall into that category. Notice, but from 61 to 80 into this interval, there are no students who stated that they send between 61 and 80 text messages per day. All right, on this line, I've been using this word interval a lot when I've been talking about histograms. I want you to tell me, what do you think interval means, all right? We've been talking about it a lot. Just put it in your own words, y'all. I really want to see what you put on that line. I'll be checking for that when I'm coming around giving out stamps tomorrow morning. All right, this part is also independent practice. It says to make a histogram for the data below, and you do this by yourself, all right? Do not come into the classroom with this part empty tomorrow, all right? Make sure you read this question, and then you make a histogram here in this section that I provided for you. All right, moving into part 3 of our lesson. This part is on box plots. This is our final type of graph. And remember, all 3 of these are ways we display our data. It's ways we can see data with our eyes, all right, instead of just looking at numbers. All right, so the 3 things you need. The first thing is called the median. And if you need to know how to spell it, it's right here. All right, so median is the middle point in the data set. All right, so if we were to line up our data from least to greatest, it is the number that is directly in the middle. All right, so half of our data is going to be below that middle point, and half of our data is going to be above that middle point. All right, very important you understand that. All right, and the second word, the middle number between the minimum and the median, we call that the lower quartile. All right, so it's the median of the bottom half. All right, and the third definition is the middle number between the maximum and the median. We call that the upper quartile. All right, and it is the median of the top half of our data points. All right, the next thing I wanted you to do is to label the minimum, the maximum, the median, the lower quartile, and the upper quartile on this number line here. Notice the data is already being lined up from least to greatest. All right, first thing I'm going to label is my minimum, all right, which is going to be 0. It's just our lowest number. I'm going to put minimum, M-I-N. All right, that's our minimum value. Our maximum value in our data set would be here, 100. So this is our maximum. I'm just going to put max for maximum. Make sure you're filling out and labeling your number line. The next thing we need to identify is the median. And if I look, it's already been circled for you, so it shouldn't be hard to find. But if we notice, 20 is directly in the middle, and this is our median. And I'm just going to put M-E-D to stand for median. All right, and notice our median, we have half of the data points are below 20, and half of the data points are above 20. All right, next, our lower quartile. So if we were to isolate and look at just the bottom half, the lower quartile is the number that is the median of this set of numbers. So here is our lower quartile. I'm just going to put an LQ for lower quartile. And then here, if we look at our top half, the top half of our data set, and the middle number here would be 50, and that is our upper quartile. And I'm going to put UQ for upper quartile. All right, now on your page, it should be a blank here, and I want you to now make a box plot using the 5-number summary. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do on your paper, since you're going to be drawing yours from scratch, you need to draw your number line. Notice on my number line, I start at 0, all right, since that's my lowest data point, and I go all the way up to 100, which is my maximum data point. And I go in intervals or groups of 10. So 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way up to 100. All right? What you want to do first is you want to go ahead and place your dots on the numbers that represent your 5-number summary. So I'm going to place a dot above the 0 because that's my minimum value. I'm going to place a dot above the 10 because that is my lower quartile. I'm going to place a dot above 20, which represents my median. I'm going to place a dot on the 50, which is my upper quartile. And then I'm going to place a dot on 100, which represents the greatest value in the data set or the maximum. All right? Then all I want to do is I'm going to make a rectangle that goes from my lower quartile all the way up to my upper quartile. So I want a rectangle to do all of that. And then once I make that rectangle, I'm going to draw a line down the middle to represent the median. So if you need to stop that, pause it, you can. But those are the essential steps. And the last 2 things you want to do is draw what I call your whiskers. All right, draw the whiskers. And one will go from the lower quartile to the median, and then from the upper quartile to the maximum. All right, and we're going to practice drawing those, so you really want to make sure you understand this example. If you don't, stop the video, rewind, and watch it again. All right? All right, let's go ahead and answer these last couple of questions.
Part of our little video, I want you to go ahead and get down these last questions. The interquartile range is the difference between the upper and lower quartile. So if I look here, my interquartile range would be from 10 up to 50, or 50 subtract 10, which would be 40 in this case if I was looking at this box plot. So the interquartile range is just the distance or the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. What does the median of the data above mean? So if we look at the median, boop, boop, boop. The median means that, and that should say that, not the median means that half of the data points were below 20 and half of our data were above 20. All right. Remember to get everything that's in red. Is the spread wider above or below the median and explain? Well, if we look at our box plot and the median, it seems that on below the median is more bunched up. Our data is more bunched up. Above our median, the data is more spread out, all right? So I will say the spread is wider above the median. The distance between the median and the upper quartile is wider than the distance between the median and the lower quartile. So we could say that our data is clustered down here, all right? It's more spread out up here. Explain what the length of the rectangular box represent, and we just went over this. The length of the rectangular box represents the interquartile range. So the whole box represents the distance from the upper quartile to the lower quartile, which we just learned means our interquartile range. All right, that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you in class tomorrow for practice.